People like Wendy understand that a Facebook click means nothing until you provide value and you put a face to the click. A good ad on Facebook creates conversation. A good ad on Facebook creates dialogue. That's what we're looking to do. And when you offer value to someone, you give them something and you deliver on that value, you open up the opportunity to create conversation.
Well, I believe that we are live, and welcome LabCoatAgents to another episode with one of our premier people that we work with here at StreetText, and we're excited today. We're just going to take a little bit of a different look at things today, take a look at some of the marketing aspects and maybe some of the understanding behind the things. You know, why do we run the ads that we do? Why are these things working the way they are? Well, we don't necessarily need you to know that because we have these brilliant people behind us who will take care of that for us, but I'm sure a lot of you would be intrigued, so you can get a little bit more information and get a little bit better understanding about that. So before I just introduce today, everybody, if for whatever reason you have to drop off, or this is such a great webinar, you want to watch it 3 or 4 times, it will be in the LabCoat thing as well. So our LabCoat YouTube channel, and if you can watch this 6, 7, 10 times, it's probably worth it. So, but without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Ira, Ira's been with us many times on this call, one of our great coaches here at StreetText, and Maddie, who's relatively new at StreetText, and she's kind of one of those marketing geniuses that we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to pass that over to Maddie. She's going to do some stuff, and I think we're really excited about what we're going to see today. So wow, it's Maddie.
Perfect. Thank you so much for handing it over. So like mentioned, I'm Maddie. Today we're going to be really talking about some fun, creative, and social media marketing trends, which is basically, the power behind all the ads that you're running. We really want to kind of show you how today's top trends can help to grow your paid marketing tactics and ultimately grow your brand and your success on social media. So I'm Maddie. We have Ira here as well. We're going to be going through this quick presentation, and then we'll go through a discussion at the end as well. So again, Ira, this is Ira. I'm Maddie.
That doesn't look like you two.
I know, completely different. COVID has really affected all of us, clearly. Yeah, we're just bringing some new and fresh insights as to how you can explore marketing and advertising. And we'll give you some insights into our platform as well as just industry trends overall. So let's start with an easy question here. Why should you be focusing on trends? You think, go about your busy days, you're constantly being inundated on social media and beyond. So why should you really be focusing on it? Well, it really stems down to these 3 areas: creative, audiences, and relevancy. So to start, trends really do influence creative. So have you ever maybe looked back a few years ago and you looked and you saw some sort of ad, maybe a newspaper ad, maybe something on your social media and really cringed? Yeah, that's the power of a trend. We see it all the time. Yesterday's and today's creative are really influenced by certain trends and styles. Just like, those skinny jeans that might be sitting in the back of your closet you thought were a good idea once upon a time. It's a trend too. The second point here is appealing to certain audiences. So we all know in your days, you're appealing to different areas and different audiences. Potentially you're wanting to reach a certain demographic, maybe a first-time home buyer, maybe a retiree. Each specific target audience has a different trend that they might be following, and you should really understand how to be reaching them with trends. And then the third and most important part is relevancy. This is really the key to trends and the key to making your personal brand relevant. You need to make sure that you're participating in trends, because if you're not, you might be missing out on an entire conversation, and who knows where that conversation could lead.
Before you go to the next slide,
Yeah.
if you don't mind. So this is great information, but as somebody who may be a little bit older than some of the other people watching here, I try and stay up on tech and things, but where are we going to get this information from? Like, it's great, we should stay up with the trends, but
Totally.
as my wife and I sit around and talk about how we have no idea who that person is on E-Entertainment, like, I don't know who that is, because we're not 20 anymore. What are the things that you guys do, and maybe what are the things that our audience might do to make sure that they're staying relevant with those trends so that their ads are having some more success? And maybe you're going to cover that, I don't know, but I think it's a very important question for our audience.
Yeah, let's talk about it now. I think the most important thing and the most important way you can be up to date on trends that relate to your audience is understanding where the audience is and where your people are. So again, maybe you are reaching first-time home buyers. Maybe those individuals might be on a TikTok or an Instagram. So make sure you are scrolling, taking some time out of your day to be just looking, seeing what's out there, seeing what tools you can have. Potentially you're maybe reaching a retiree. Maybe you're wanting to kind of focus more on Facebook. Or if maybe you're really focused on flipping homes, check out Pinterest, see what's out there. And honestly, the trends do change day to day. But just make sure you're kind of thinking about where your audience would be and look there.
I think it requires a certain amount of focus about who you want to go after. Like if you know what your business plan is for the year and where you want to focus, like if you have brand new agents that you're looking to do more buyer stuff with, you might be getting them to focus on the platforms where more buyers are living. Like we launch ads on Facebook and Instagram, and we always advocate for clicking the Instagram button when you go to launch an ad, when you're going to be looking for buyers. And then when you're going to look for sellers, we say, keep the Instagram button off, just go with the Facebook audience for now, because that demographic is still the home ownership demographic. Although I know trends are changing. I was talking to a young guy who was in his 20s the other day. He's a friend of mine. And I didn't know if it was him on Facebook. I'm like, is this you, or have you been hacked? Right. And he said, why, Uncle Ira? And I said, well, because you're young and you don't live on Facebook. He goes, no, but I am on Facebook now to keep up with my old friends. Apparently me. But he's like, I'm also on there for marketplace. So it just shows that the trend, like where the young generation was navigating away from Facebook, now we're seeing a bit of a navigation back too.
Well, and you all study these trends quite a bit, and I study them too. So 3 years ago, this is what we heard: millennials don't buy houses. Millennials don't buy houses. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's no longer true. And maybe y'all can share some light on that, because, that's what everyone kept saying. Oh, these millennials, they're not going to do this. They're not going to do that. But at the end of the day, they're getting older. And guess what? As we get older, life changes. So are we seeing a trend for more millennials, or at least you guys, and are you advertising them more maybe than you were 2 years ago?
Speaking as a millennial, I just bought a pre-built. There you go. And thinking about all of my friends and kind of my general pool, yes, I think, as much as trends are there, they come and go. You've got to think about life overall. People will eventually want to buy houses. It's a matter of, the market affordability, all of that. But a lot of my friend group has bought houses, even in some of the trickiest markets, they've ended up making it work. So yeah, that's my input as a pure millennial, but Ira, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, I think just millennials right now, are aware of the life that they want to live. So they are goal oriented and they are running towards things like that. So it's really not pulling and the trend is changing. People trend and they move from platform to platform. I think where we can get confused is we try to keep track of all the trends and try to be everything on every platform. So I think it's really important that who your ideal customer is. And I think somebody who is older has a lot of wisdom for the younger buyer. So I think one of the ads we're going to show you is a 12 tips ad. So if I'm a millennial, I'm more interested in the 12 tips. I'm more interested in easy digestible information, where the home value ad that we run might be tilted towards an older crowd that's looking into their home value to sell their home. So it's really the type of ads that you run, and testing them out and seeing what comes out on the other end of it will start showing you the trend.
That's awesome, Ira.
Yeah. All right, I'll keep diving in and feel free to interject. I love this discussion. So the first point with creative. So you think of trends right away, you think about, okay, what does that look like? So the first thing that usually comes to mind is your creative and how you can make sure that is relevant. So the first point I want to talk about here is, really tailoring the trend. The best brands, the biggest brands are really using trends in their own unique ways. They're not just picking it up and completely replicating it. They're adding their own personal flair and spice to it. And that's how you can really make sure that your personal brand sticks and stays true. So maybe you're on TikTok, maybe you see a fun TikTok audio trend, really see how it could apply to your platform and your industry and your target. So maybe there's a trend about showing a before and after. Maybe it's your listing before you staged it and after you staged it. Could be something really cool like that. And that could really help you reach, again, the right audience. We chatted about this already, but really being up to date with the different ad types and platforms. So you need to make sure that you are using what is best for your business, but also what is best for the platform. We all know that digital marketing changes rapidly, and each platform has, their preferred ad of the month and their flavor of the month. How you can see that, just make sure you're, again, just maybe every now and then doing a pulse check on your platforms. Maybe you're on Facebook. Maybe you should be trying a carousel ad or maybe a collections ad. Seeing what those platforms are favoring is really beneficial. And all that takes is a quick Google search to see those best practices. Knowing when it's Cheugy.
I'm going to stop you and ask you a quick. So you said this, and I think it's an important thing, and I think maybe you could just cover a little bit more. You said all it takes is a Google search to figure out what that is. So
yes,
go a little bit deeper and then explain what that means, because I try and create content. I know that a lot of agents out there are trying to create content, and sometimes we're like, the biggest thing that keeps us from creating content is what content should we create? So maybe if you could give us a little bit of insight on what we might be able to do to help us create content that people are actually looking for instead of just winging it.
Totally. So there's a few different resources that you can use in terms of creating content and finding those key relevant nuggets. So I talked about platforms. So number one, each platform has their own version of a creative studio and their best practices. You can usually find this within your ads manager. On different platforms, it does vary. Within that, they usually show some great examples. They use great examples to show how you could use a carousel ad, for instance, so some of what the best brands are doing. That's a great starting point. The second point here is, looking at your industry. I think that's very important. This is a fun fact, but if you need to look at other brands' ads, you can do that on Facebook. You can kind of jump in, you can inspect it, see what they're doing, maybe get some inspiration there. And for me as a creative, I'm actually one who is going in and creating ads constantly. Sometimes some of the best inspiration comes from, Pinterest search or Google search. Say I'm like, new ad trends. There's so many articles and so much creative that exists on the internet. Again, it's about finding what you think, oh, that's a little cool, and then tailoring it to what would be best for your brand. So potentially changing the colors, the imagery, subtle tweaks on messaging. That's really how you can make sure you're reaching, again, the best audience.
Okay.
Ira, anything to add?
Yeah,
please, Ira.
One thing that we talk about is like test, don't guess. So I think sometimes when we're trying to see if a trend is going to work, we don't have enough consistency or follow through to see whether it's making a difference. We're such instantaneous creatures. So it's like one of the advantages, we have, and Maddie runs our creative labs here at StreetText, is we have a bunch of users who are interested in trying out some of these trends. So we put them all into a test group, and we have the advantage of running a bunch of different versions of the same ad to see, did capital letters hit? Did a question mark hit? Did this image hit? And because you have the collective data of more than one user, you can start to see a trend. Where we're often like these lone islands, we throw out one ad and we're like, it didn't work, it sucked. And then we give up and then we come back a couple of weeks later. It's the same with just my social media feed. Like, what gets the most attention? I can assure you that your personal social media feed, it's not the ones where you say like, hey, I'm a real estate agent. Hey, I'm this. Hey, I'm that. Check out my listing. It's like the one that I've been doing. I'm in the middle of birthday month. I have like 5 of the 6 people in my house are having their birthday this month. They all landed in the same month. So every night I'm taking pictures of me decorating and tearing it down and decorating the next day. I've now humanized the experience. I'm getting way more likes and comments on that feed as I put it out. So you start to recognize what's getting interaction, what's getting conversations, take the cumulative data over time to determine a trend instead of just throwing one thing out there, nothing happening with it. And we're going to talk a little bit later about how Facebook picking their audience, you could decide something's not working when in fact it just landed on the wrong audience. That's another important part of it.
And just adding to that as well, I always like to think when you talk about your own personal Facebook feed, put yourself in the shoes of who you want to be seeing your ad and think, would I click on this? If I'm scrolling at the end of a long day of work, I'm tired, and you're scrolling, what do you click on? That it's as simple as that. Or maybe ask your friend or your partner. That's very easy ways to kind of decipher if you think an ad will work, is just getting that second gut check. And I always find that is a great technique to use as well.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. And I want to piggyback on what Ira said too. As part of the StreetText group, if you will, you're almost going to get that by default, like you being part of the Facebook group and using the product. And here's the thing, why be out on the island by yourself when we have thousands of users? And you know, rip off and deploy is one of my big things. So you, if you're a creative like Maddie, go for it. If you're not a creative, say like me, then find something that somebody else is doing and then split test that based on what that's going on. You don't have to be a marketing genius to rip off and deploy. So that was just kind of
research and development, rip off and deploy. Same thing. There you go. All right. Last point on here, just to bring up, is knowing when it's Cheugy. Now, I bet you there's people on the phone or on the line right now for like, Cheugy, what the heck is that? I'll educate you. Cheugy is the new term that Gen Z and some millennials are using to basically describe tacky. It's a new term. I learned it as well. But it's basically, you know, just knowing when it's just, no, it's a little dated, it's a little wrong. So I said here, you know, remember when your mom started wearing those sunglasses you thought were cool? Yeah, they're not cool anymore. So the same thing goes with trends. You want to make sure, again, you're just keeping a pulse on the world around you. You can see it within design trends as you kind of flip through stores, see what their brand looks like, see kind of, you know, what videos are looking like, anything like that. And we did mention a few tools that you can kind of gauge how you can measure your creative and find those new trends. But just know when you're taking a little too far, you need to turn it off. All right, jumping into audience. So this is a big one. And I know we keep saying that word audience, and bringing it up. Not every trend is for every person. So as Ira was saying, you know, you got to test. You got to make sure you are reaching the right people and you are seeing what works for the right people. So thoughtfully think through, again, what would people respond to? What do they want to be hearing? And what do they want to be seeing? And that's kind of your perfect mixture here. And again, make sure you're on the right platforms for your audience. We're not saying you need to be on every single platform. That's actually the wrong approach to branding. Find out where you should be and put a lot of your effort into those platforms. Maybe it's TikTok. I know that's a big one that we keep bringing up here, but that is great to show, you know, kind of a fun side to your brand, showcase some listings, showcase who you are and kind of where you're going. And that might reach a younger demographic. Potentially Facebook, maybe you're thinking about more traditional, more, you know, some lead generation. That's a great platform for that. You just really need to analyze where you want to reach and who you want to reach and where they are. And you might be surprised.
Can I interject when it comes to that Cheugy term? Because I'll give you an example of Cheugy. If you're trying to attract the TikToker, they're going to notice. They're going to notice when you're not on their platform. They're going to notice when you're new to it. But on the other end of it, if I'm attracting somebody who's hearing about TikTok but isn't cool and hip to TikTok, I might do something Cheugy that attracts them. Like I saw somebody post a video and I said to my wife, I would kind of cringed and I showed it to her. And it was this older lady doing one of those TikTok like videos pointing to a bunch of terms. And I was like, oh my God, look at this lady. Like I was kind of cringing and my wife slapped me on the couch and she said, she called me a name. She's like, she's so cute. I love her. What's her handle? I'm following her.
Aww.
Started to follow her because I was here, like she was Cheugy. But because she was like someone who was making an effort towards it, it appeared as like, my wife was really, she followed her. She's following her. She loves her. She's following her online. So sometimes even being okay with appearing Cheugy might help build your brand.
Well, and you know, it's very interesting right now. This is a concept, and this got introduced to me by a guy named Adam Contos. And for those of you who are Remax agents, you know who he is. He's the CEO of Remax. And he talked about this concept, and it's very interesting. It's called parasocial marketing. And in essence, that's what we're doing when we're on TikTok, when we're on Instagram. We're telling our story our way. And here's the great thing about it. who are you going to attract? Like Ira clearly was not attracted to that woman, and I'm not talking, in a weird way, but his wife clearly was. So that doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. And the more authentic, the more you can be you, guess what? It's so much easier to work with people who like you before they even meet you. And that's the opportunity I think a lot of us are missing. If you're a crazy person, be a crazy person. Some people like crazy people. Great. If you're laid back, then be that. But the best part about parasocial marketing and the opportunity we have in 2021 is we can attract people who are like us, and we don't have to work so darn hard to get people to like us. They can like us before they even meet us. So huge opportunity.
Authenticity is key. And it's actually a huge phenomenon on Instagram now, even to be going away from those very curated feeds of perfection to be more authentic, to be like a platform like TikTok where it's more kind of off the cuff. That's why with the younger demographic, Snapchat is so good for, sharing those moments of their day-to-day life. We're shifting away from that perfection into more of a world of authenticity. So that is an amazing point to add. And I'm so glad you added that in. And then the third point here, and again, as we're going through this, there is, and you've kind of heard there are little sidebars, there is no perfect equation for great trends, but these are just all great tips in order to ensure that your ads are relevant. So you want to make sure that you are giving yourself a seat at the table regardless. We talk about authenticity. We talk about being a part of the conversation. It might feel daunting at first. It might feel a little awkward like that TikTok video, but you want to make sure that you are participating. You are keeping up to date and you are being a part of kind of that broader phenomenon that's happening on social media, for instance. You need to make sure you're participating and you're not missing out on conversations because you don't know where those could lead. Say potentially you try it out on TikTok. Hey, maybe you get a huge influx of clients from that. You might not, which is totally fine. Again, there's no perfect equation, but you need to try out to see what works for you, what works for your audience in order to make sure that you are staying relevant in the market overall. Cool. Now, specifically, just want to talk about, we have kind of interjected this a bit already, but how we're specifically using trends. So I have an ad example here of an ad that we have run through StreetText and how this kind of came to be. So we've chatted through a lot here about testing, making sure that you are understanding what works and what doesn't. So this ad here started off very different. We went through multiple iterations, multiple creative, looked at, okay, what would someone want to click? What would make them click? And here it was getting content. They're on Facebook at the end of the day. They're wanting to read, they're wanting to understand. So this ad specifically served up content to the user who might click through it. They're going to get the top tips. It is now top 12 tips. So as we say, it does move and it does change. And we did change it as we saw the audience react to it. But it's very important to focus on testing, focus on different audiences, as we mentioned. And I'll hand it over to Ira to specifically talk about how we're using audiences and how we're using different tests on a day-to-day basis, even through regular ads, as well as new creative tests that we're running.
Yeah, I think it's important when you understand, like Maddie works with our creative group to come up like with what wording is getting the most clicking, what picture is getting the most clicking, how are we optimizing the ad to make it work? And that's the split testing that a lot of us are used to. Is we test all the different creative against each other to find the creative that lands the best and gets us the best results. So that's the kind of template we release here to StreetText to our users. So now that this ad has gone through a month and a half worth of testing and tweaking to make sure it clicked and pulling the averages from all the different users, we build it out into a template that you launch. And sometimes you have an awesome creative idea that you've launched a Facebook ad for, but you quickly threw it in the wastebasket. And the reason is because even though we know this ad gets clicks, Facebook does a very funny thing in the first 24 hours of you launching an ad. What is Facebook in? Facebook is in the attention economy. This is not a phone. This is a marketing platform. So what that means is that they're selling you the fact they have people's attention captive. So if they were to just say, hey, everyone can advertise, you can put whatever you want on there, my feed would soon be full of like ads. Like, have you ever clicked on a blog? You went to go read the blog and the blog had so many ads in it, you just gave up. You were like, I was interested in the 5 things, but now I've seen 17 ads and not one thing. So I'm gone. I don't look at the blog anymore. Facebook would be like that if they let everyone advertise. So when you put an ad out there, Facebook in the first 24 hours is testing the relevancy, and they're doing it based on the first 500 people that see your ad. So even though we know this ad worked, let's say we just launched one of them through our platform. Well, when we launched that one ad, if the first 500 people that day only cared about cat videos, they would have just scrolled right past. They would have just kept scrolling past. And then Facebook would have said, irrelevant, doesn't matter, low relevancy score. And now they're going to go after the few people that did engage with the ad. So that's why we always say whatever ad we've come up with that's a good creative, you want to test the exact same ad. And that's the part that's confusing. The exact same ad 3 times. We actually would launch this ad 3 times, exactly the same way. Exact same drop, exact same image, exact same copy, because each time Facebook is selecting a brand new sample audience through Facebook. And what's going to happen? Well, those are going to be 3 separate reactions. That's why sometimes you had a marvelous post on Facebook and you posted it, and just the people that first saw it didn't care about it. They didn't click on it, so Facebook didn't show it more. So it's the same type of concept. So we always say, understand that once you find an ad, you still want to test it against different audiences, because whatever audience sees that ad is going to dictate how Facebook treats that ad beyond that 24 hours. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
We always say it's best to see it in action. I know here in our trial, people don't believe us, and then they go and they do it. And then the 24 hours later, we say, see, this ad got absolutely no clicks. Not a single person came through it. But I had somebody this morning, she had 5 leads on one ad. She was paying $1 something a lead in a 24-hour period. The other ad, not a single lead. Exact same ad, but different audiences that Facebook turned it up for. So what did we do? We turned off the ad that got her no leads and was just spending all of her Starbucks money. We kept the other ad on because she had like 5 leads that she can now follow up with. That's the key.
Yeah, great stuff. All right, so just wrapping up the presentation portion here. What does this all mean? I think we already know what this means now, but just don't disregard trends. Make sure you're keeping up to date, using them thoughtfully, and really you'll wow your audience. You'll wow your audience, which in turn for you means amazing capture, amazing engagement, and hopefully the data will really help you to inform trends to come. You can look at what worked, what didn't work, and really tailor and tweak. Like I mentioned, there is no perfect equation for the best way to approach trends and creative and your ads. But what you can do is as you start, you can start to learn what works for your audience, learn what works when you're creative, and in turn, it'll be relevant and you'll be good to go.
Thanks, Maddie. Great insight.
Oh, thank you. Of course.
So let's talk a little bit about this, because there are people watching this who are like excited. They're like, great, I'm going to figure out what the trends are. I'm going to run marketing against them. I'm going to use Ad Manager. But here's a couple of things that I'm going to go out on a limb that say that some of the people are like, okay, this is fabulous for somebody else, but it may not be for me. So let's talk a little bit about how understanding conceptually what we covered today is very important, but maybe we can not necessarily have to understand at the level that Maddie does, because I can tell you, once upon a time, many years ago, I was an ads manager expert. And then 15 minutes later, I didn't know how to use the darn thing anymore, because it changes that often. And that, so if you're someone who's spending all day, every day in ads manager, I'm sure it's brilliant. But what about the average person? And how can we use something like StreetText to not necessarily have to get in the weeds as much as someone like yourself, Maddie? So I'd love to hear what you guys do with that and how that might make it a little bit easier.
Give it to Ira for this one.
Yeah, sure. For sure. I was looking for the unmute button.
No, all good.
I was like, where is that unmute button? And I'm going to share my screen here quickly. So like we like to call the ads manager the labyrinth of frustration and confusion. If you ever felt like you needed a margarita very quickly in the day, just try to launch an ad. It's getting more and more. It's like they purposely go out of their way to move buttons on you to make things more complicated. So like you said, I love that. Like 15 minutes later, I was no longer an expert. So we like to say it like this, like you either have to hire an expert to do it for you, or you have to become an expert. That's the way we look at it. So what we do is we become the expert on your behalf, and then we allow you to become the master of your own Facebook ads manager by basically mediating the relationship on your behalf. You don't have to go and play with the Facebook ads manager. In fact, stay out of the Facebook ads manager. We'll tell you when you need to go in. We'll put a little warning on your account here. So like there are tools like our tool where you can come in and quickly click on the funnels, and those ads that we were talking about with Maddie here that she's been working on the creative for. I mean, that ad we just built out into a funnel for about a week or so now, more than a week. It's been about 2.5 weeks. We've made it available for all of our users. So that ad is right here now. So Wendy, one of our users who we've had on the LabCoatAgents, she's already got a listing signed and up because of this ad. She put it out on a Wednesday. The person texted her back right away. She started a conversation back and forth. She ended up at their property, and our mastermind that morning, she said, I have the appointment tonight. And she then informed us that she got the listing from this ad already. So, you know, it's tested, and she just had to do this. She went select. She just launched the ad. This is what the ad looks like on Facebook. And then you go to the next page, we pull in the privacy policy that you need in order to run the ad. So we figure that out for you. And then she just dropped a pin. She decided where she was going to put it. In her case, she was in Las Vegas with 19,000 other real estate agents. She clicked done, and then she just went next, and she did a split test. Remember that split test we talked about? 3 ads at $9 a day. She clicked deploy, and she had 3 ads, that ad that we know works, but 3 different audiences. 24 hours later, she went in and turned off 2 ads, the ones that didn't have the best results. She kept only the one on with the best results. And then I'd like to say that our business is all about sitting back and waiting for all the listings to come in, but that's not how real estate works. People like Wendy understand that a Facebook click means nothing until you provide value and you put a face to the click. A good ad on Facebook creates conversation. A good ad on Facebook creates dialogue. That's what we're looking to do. And when you offer value to someone, you give them something and you deliver on that value, you open up the opportunity to create conversation. And I mean, all we're doing is taking something that's always worked. Guess what's always worked? Yep. Knocking on people's doors. Guess what? It sucked. People slam doors in your faces. People don't say nice things. People don't talk, but you do it because you might land on that one person. We're taking that trend and making it digital. You're knocking on doors digitally to create conversations. Guess what the results are going to be? Some of the same. Slam doors, not fun conversations, but we do it because we know if we want to meet new people and grow our business, we have to put ourselves out there.
Yeah. And we're taking it even one step further with some of the ads that we're testing and new templates that we're pulling into the platform by having ads that will reach customers at different stages in their life cycle. So yeah, there might be that person that, hey, they want their home valuation. They want to sell yesterday. Great, let's reach them. But there might be someone who's really early in the process and maybe just wants to know, what should I be thinking about like a year or 6 months, 3 months before I even want to sell? Maybe they just want to read. But those ads are even more beneficial because you're able to start the conversation with them, keep them hooked, add them to your CRM. And then eventually when they are ready to sell, hey, you're already top of mind, you've established that relationship. So it's important to be reaching customers at different stages in the life cycle. And that's what we try to do with our ads. So not just, you know, that final door knock, but every single step before that as well.
Awesome. So we had a question in the group, and I think that this is an important part, a thing that people may or may not know about StreetText. By the way, for all the people who are watching through the Zoom, I've actually put the link in there. There's a free 7-day trial that you can try anything and everything with StreetText, get literally the full experience without paying a nickel outside of your own ad spend, and the ad spend will be up to you. But with that in mind, I think this is a great question. So tell us how StreetText provides guidance and interaction, because I'm sure there's people out there literally watching who have never run a Facebook ad, and this may seem overwhelming, or other people who go, I've run a Facebook ad, but it didn't work. So tell what that process looks for. If I sign up for StreetText today and I want to start running ads, how do I do it? What's that process look like to make sure that I'm not just, guessing?
Yeah, we kind of like to say that, taking on social media is like attacking that elephant that's in the room that is a useful source to grow a business, but you just feel so overwhelmed in being able to take it on. So our trial experience, we talk about it on our first demo, that we're going to feed you that elephant one bite at a time, that we're going to take on the elephant, but we're going to do it in a simple and effective way for you to understand. I mean, the beginning of any funnel is a functioning good Facebook ad. So our trial is really about showing you how you use our templates to split test and land on the results that you could expect in your market. So you can see, like, if I spend X amount of dollars in X market, then what is a reasonable expectation in terms of leads that come in and the type of leads that come in. So we walk you through that process of first picking the ad that you want to launch, whether you want to target buyers or whether you want to target the sellers. Then we help you set up that split test. And then you work with a coach or a guide here at StreetText that helps you read the results 24 hours later on that split test. And then we give you tips on how do I keep that ad running and working well. But that's all conversation starters. Then we're going to introduce you to our StreetText community, get you in our Facebook group so that you can start talking to our community. Like, tomorrow is Mastermind Day, and we love Mastermind Day because our whole community comes with all their ideas about how they're generating conversation there.
And I would say that's the power of StreetText, is actually the community. As someone who works in ads every day, yes, of course, simplifying that process is definitely needed. But what's even more powerful is the community that comes with it. There is the Facebook group, which you think, Facebook group, nothing. But every day people are sharing ideas, what's working in their market, what people should be trying. And it's really helpful, especially if you're just starting out, to really understand what's working best for some people. But then it's always constantly, I say it's a conversation. So for me, when I'm testing ads every week in different creative, I'm actually listening to what our clients want. So the ad that we tested this week came from someone's idea. They said, hey, you know what? I'd love if we could have something like this on StreetText. I created it, and we're testing it to see if it would work with the broader platform. So it is that community feel. And I think that's something that you're not going to get anywhere else. I've never seen it anywhere else. And I think it's so powerful. So beyond the great tool, even better community.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you all heard one of the things that Ira said, but it's one of the things that I've been so impressed because, I've worked with, I don't know, they call me the shiny object guy. So I've worked with every company out there, it feels like. But the one thing that I find relatively unique to StreetText is, and this is the word, is coach. And as a real estate coach, I'm kind of fond of coaching. So I love the idea that, you're not alone. Because how often did somebody says, hey, go watch these 17 videos, go do this and go do, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about hands-on, helping you run ads, helping you solve problems, and actually, getting on the phone or getting on a Zoom with you and actually doing a one-on-one with you. And, when you look at the cost of a product, you would think that alone would be $1,000 a month to have that one-on-one coaching, and it's not. So I cannot express enough how much I think that is one of the things that's very unique to StreetText, and one of the things that will help you have success, because we're going to fail, and that's okay. The question is, what do I do to tweak it? And most of the time, most of us are just running around blind. So instead of running around blind, we have someone like Ira, who's a coach. I've worked with Marcus, who's a coach, and I know that there's other coaches that StreetText has gotten bigger. That to me is the best part of StreetText. That and the fact I don't have to use Facebook Ad Manager anymore. But the idea that I can get some one-on-one, I don't know why this didn't work, help me, and they're there for that. So I think that's a really important idea.
Well, I think a big sticking point for people where they don't have success is, the first one is not knowing how to use the Facebook Ads Manager. So we can just check that one off, take it off, because your time should not be spent learning how to use the Facebook Ads Manager. Your time needs to be spent on the other sticky point, which now I got a lead. Like, what do I do with it? Like, where do I go? So Wayne is asking there, is there systemized follow-up to move the initial response through the funnel? And yeah, one of our most popular ad templates has a 9-month drip campaign already connected to it. So when you launch the ad, you're not just launching the ad, you're launching the associated funnel with it. But then you do even better. I mean, you could give the same leads to different people and we're going to have different results, right?
Absolutely.
Because everyone's going to have a different follow-up process. So, I mean, there's an example in our community, Allison. Allison's busy. She's got a bunch of lead sources. She's an amazing person, has had a crazy journey in life and applied herself in real estate. She's changed none of our emails. Like, her emails are generic. They're not what we suggest. We tell you to put videos in there and update your signature and personalize it. But Allison's just left it the way it is. But what she always does, she follows up. That person asked for a home value. Allison's going to deliver on it. And even with not doing all of the boxes we suggest that she checks off, she's done 7 transactions with StreetText. She said her first one covered StreetText for her for the next 10 years. So it's just an example that even it's the follow-up that matters. So getting on a mastermind where I was like, okay, Allison, you're really busy, but could you just come to a mastermind, please? So I invited her to our mastermind and she shared what she's doing, how she's contacting these people, how she's talking to them, what she's sending them. And some of those stories, like the person never even responded for 6 months and then phoned my office and said, hey, Allison's been sending me a bunch of stuff. Like, how do I talk to her? I want her to come and list my house. So sometimes you need to hear those stories to keep at the daily behaviors that were going to result in success. But most of us just give up too soon before we see the fruits of our labor.
Yeah, and everybody who's watching this, if you're not an internet lead expert, understand this. For every 10 internet leads that are produced, and this is a stat that's 4 years old, so it's probably not even good anymore, but there's one closing, which means that our job is to set up a systemized follow-up. And I love what Ira said. You can just plug and play if you want and just use their system and let us run it. Or as you go to the Facebook group, you'll see people using BombBomb to create videos. You'll see people using HomeBot to, send out monthly reports. There's a million different ways to skin this cat. The whole key is coming up with a plan. And again, why create your own plan? Go and watch some of these things. You've talked about Wendy. We've done webinars with her. She's got fabulous ideas. And here's the thing I want to say to everybody. Anyone who I've seen who's had success in StreetText, it's not because they went out and paid a professional photographer and a professional videographer and they scripted all this stuff. They went and they were themselves. And they do goofy videos. When Eric, who was on my team, he's got a video of him waving a bunch of money like this, and it's fun, it's cute, and people like it, and people respond to it. Remember, nobody wants your professional, super cool video. They want you. They want your TikTok. They want the TikTok you, and that's really what it's all about in 2021. And join that community. Take a look at it. There's so many people who have so many cool ideas. You'll find someone that you resonate with. You might not resonate with me or Wendy, but you'll find somebody else that I like that person. I'm going to do what they do.
Authenticity is key. We talked about that earlier. It definitely resonates, especially in your follow-up. You need to make sure you're being you. And that is the most critical point. And that's going to make people feel like you're personable. They want to talk to you. You're not a robot. They want to see who you are. They want to know about your life. And I think we have all shifted towards being more authentic during this past time period, that it is table stakes. You need to be authentic.
Yeah.
And I think just social media is social. Like, that's what it is. So think about how you interact with people at a social event. You don't stand there and the second someone talks about listing their home, you go, here's my business card. You should list with me. I'm a real estate agent. Did you know that I can come over and do an appointment with you? Yet we send an email like that. Someone clicks, I'd like to know my home value. You pick up the phone, you're messaging them. Hey, here's my business card. I can come check out your house. You would never do that in a social setting. I would never pounce on you like that. I would ask you questions. I would get to know you. And I think we're not really good at asking questions. Some of our users talked about how they look for a mistake. So if I've just submitted a request for a home value, I look for a mistake in some of the information I'm looking at to be able to ask you a question about it. So just simply messaging them back, hey, I'm just looking at this, putting it together for you. I'm excited to get it to you. I noticed this, there's a discrepancy between this and this. Can you just let me know which one's correct? Thanks. Like, that's how I interact in a social environment. I wouldn't jump on you to like list your home the second we just met. I would create a conversation that would eventually lead to the invite to look at your house to list it.
Right, and I want everyone to remember this. We're talking about Facebook ads, and I'm a huge proponent of Facebook ads. But nobody woke up and said to their significant other, honey, let's sell our house. What should we do? Let's log on to Facebook. So that's not what's happening. You're doing interruption marketing. We're finding something, someone's looking at cat pictures or political garbage or whatever they're looking at. They're on Facebook, they're looking at it and they see, hey, I too wonder what my value of my house is. Or, hey, what are the 5 things I need to do to get my house sold for more? It doesn't mean that they're ready to list their house tomorrow. So, you know, remember this, and this is simple. We go back to this. People do business with people they know, like, and trust. Well, if you told me that you want 5 things to do, you know, to sell your house, that doesn't mean I want to list my house. That means I want to know about 5 things to list my house. So yes, of course, that person's more likely than the person who doesn't, but we need to understand that we are learning to communicate with these people. We're building rapport with them. They're not, you know, you're not going to invite a stranger over to your house 3 seconds after you click on a Facebook ad. So I love where Ira's coming from. Think about it as a regular conversation at a party. I think that's an amazing way to look at it and a really good thing. So we are at our time. I appreciate everybody being here today. I'll let both Maddie and Ira just give us some final thoughts from them. But before I do that, in both on Facebook and on here, we have on the Zoom webinar, we've got a link for a free 7-day trial. There's no downside to trying it out for free. Take some time, click on that, work with one of the coaches at StreetText. It'll be well worth your time. And if it's not, it doesn't cost you anything anyway. So that's kind of my final thoughts. I appreciate y'all being here. And then I'll pass it over to Maddie. I'd love to hear any final thoughts from you.
No, it was great to kind of share these insights with you today. And I think, like I mentioned, there's no perfect formula. So make sure you're just aware of that as you're going through your creative and your trend analysis. Think about your creative, always think about your audience, always think about testing. Make sure you're relevant and authentic. And that's all I want to say. And it was a pleasure sharing with everyone today. And Ira, anything else?
I think it's just a matter of a trend doesn't matter if you're not consistent with it. So oftentimes you throw out one thing and you say it didn't work. Well, it didn't work because you didn't keep your foot on the pedal. If you want a car to go somewhere, you have to, like, imagine how far you could travel in filling your funnel if you put your foot on the gas and left it there for 12 months. Because what most people do is they put their foot on the gas, they take their foot off. They put their foot on the gas. Are we there yet? Take their foot off. Put their foot on the gas, they take their foot off. And they're like, we haven't got anywhere and I have whiplash and I have no idea what's happening here. So if you want to get somewhere, it means consistent applied effort towards something over the long haul. The people that are doing it well, they don't have any secrets. They just have a good disciplined work ethic and they're consistently applying these trends over time. They're not trying and stopping and trying and stopping. They're consistently trying. They consistently have their foot on the pedal. So, you know, learn from them. You're always going to find the ones that are like, it doesn't work. Well, you don't want to learn how it doesn't work from the people who are saying it doesn't work. You want to learn from the ones who are saying, this is working. I want to partner with the person who's saying, this is working for me, because you're going to find both people. It's not working and it is working. Which one do you want to learn from?
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. I love that final thought. Be consistent. Go out there. Give StreetText a try. Thanks everybody for being here today. Thanks again, Ira and Maddie, and we'll see everybody again soon.
Have a good one.
Thank you.